Welcome back to On the Prowl, presented by Cardiac Cats. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and today I'm joined by a new guest, guy I know very well, my brother Josh. He's also a fellow member of the Duval Faithful, and today we're going to be talking all things Jaguars. Sorry, no Chiefs today. And, there's this crazy dominant win that happened on Sunday over Satan himself, Tennessee Titans. So we gotta jag up this show because that was a great game. How are you feeling after that?
I'm feeling really good. Thanks for having me on to your podcast. I really appreciate that. I lost my voice after that game was over and was just in, I wouldn't say disbelief, but it was just so cool to see this team, the progress that they're making and how clutch they came up, really taking control of the game early on in the second half, right after the really clutch throw to Zay Jones that Trevor made to end the first half to put them up and so they could go away with the lead going into halftime.
Yeah, it was a very impressive game. I think the part that I liked the most was just how serious this was to the Jaguars out of the entire schedule. You shouldn't look ahead to games, but the fans know that Tennessee is our biggest rival. We hate Tennessee here. I mean, they are our arch rival, and for the Jaguars to take it as seriously as they did, and to know, like, to have the players know some of the history behind that too, which we'll get into a little bit today. Um, that meant a lot as a fan to see those players go out and just beat the crap out of them. The Titans have not respected Jacksonville for really since probably 1999. I mean, it's been over 2 decades, so you hope it's a changing of the guard with that game. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna start things off by talking about what happened around the NFL this last week. So the
All right.
probably the big thing to me, actually there's quite a few, but the Mahomes game was kind of uncharacteristic. In his career, he's had 3 games where he's had 3 interceptions, and he just had the third on Sunday against the Broncos, and they nearly lost after having a 27-point lead almost going into halftime. Then I think they gave up 14 before the half
Mm-hmm.
started. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a lot of low to mid-tier QBs in the league that if they threw 3 interceptions in a single game, they likely aren't going to engineer a game-winning drive to make up for it and have a chance to win. I think Mahomes consistently seems to defy this logic no matter how many mistakes he makes during a game. And I just feel from watching him every time he's on that field, that team has a chance to score. And I think that you can't say that about all quarterbacks. And I really respect Patrick Mahomes for that. I would say he's definitely making more reckless decisions, but I wouldn't say that it seems new to me because he's always a risk taker and just has to be the hero sometimes, maybe a lot of the time. And he seems to always find a way. I mean, the guy responds well to blitzes. He often excels when he's forced out of the pocket and on foot. Some of the throws he makes across his body with the receivers way downfield and just nails them as if he was standing still in the pocket while he's like sprinting away from a defender is just incredible. I think a good example of that in his last game was where he kind of tossed it to Jerick McKinnon when he
Yeah,
was looking at being forced out of bounds.
yeah, that play was nuts. I couldn't believe that they literally had no one covering him. I mean, if you're I think it was Justin Simmons who was on him. Yeah, you don't buy on the quarterback there. That was a bad play by the Broncos, but he just finds a way. And I mean, he said after the game, in response to the 3 interceptions, like he's gonna keep shooting. That's who he is as a quarterback. He's gonna make mistakes. He was getting better at it, over the last few years. He may start making more mistakes like he is this year, but even if he throws 3 interceptions in a game, he's still going to be able to make the big plays. We saw it in the Super Bowl when they played the Bucks, where that game should be over. That team should be dead, and you
Mm-hmm.
see Mahomes making the perfect throw, and unfortunately for him, nothing came of it. But he definitely doesn't get that flustered in a lot of those games. He can come back from the bad plays. So
Yeah, and I see so much trust in his offense, especially in Kelsey or McKinnon or McCole Hardman, whoever. There's always just someone when the play looks like it's about to end. There's someone that gets open.
Yeah.
Like defenses just seem to not be able to cover everyone, and there's always an option for Mahomes to get to. And I think that's because he's a really, I mean, he excels at improvising. He's a playmaker, and I think he's gifted in a way that many other QBs are not. And if you look at his stats on the season, he's outpacing the favorite candidate for MVP by 1,000 yards on the season, referring to Jalen Hurts. And he's got more interceptions, but he is in the MVP conversation right now, so I think that's worth noting.
Yeah, I still think he's in it too. I do think that Hurts is the front runner right now, though, just because you look at his turnovers. He's had 3 interceptions on the year. He's had some fumbles as well, and then you got to throw in the run game because he's had, I think it was like 600, 700 yards on the ground. So
Hmm.
he's having a big year on the ground. He's got 10 touchdowns there as well. So it kind of matches up a lot, and you see how big of a step the Eagles are taking this year. But
Yeah.
Mahomes is probably going to break the single season passing yards record on the pace he's on. I think he needs 281 per game, and he's been getting over 300 a game. So we should see that. Um,
I think that's completely doable. And even if he wasn't able to accomplish that this season, I believe he would in the future seasons.
yeah, he will at some point. There's more games to do it as well, and that just does so much to help players overcome those records. The other crazy, well, there's 2 other crazy things in my mind this week. Um, the San Francisco 49ers. I guess it just doesn't matter who they have playing at quarterback because Brock Purdy, after being Mr. Irrelevant, being the last draft pick, having, I think it was his first NFL play, he handed off the ball to the wrong side and no one was even there. And this
Hmm.
guy just beat Tom Brady like 35-7 in San Francisco. And I think a lot of that has more to do with Brady's team just not being good right now. But that was a crazy game, and you've got reports for Tom Brady saying he's going to return next year, but all options are open. He has. I think he's got his contract ending, so if he wants to make a move out of Tampa, he can make a move. But it'll be interesting to see what he does.
Yes. I saw a picture of Brock Purdy and Tom Brady shaking hands after the game, great to great. And I'm not an
Yeah,
expert on like NFL statistics, but Brock Purdy had 134 quarterback rating. I think that might be kind of good.
that I didn't see that. That's kind of nuts. That's better than what Lawrence had this last week. I think he had like 121, and he looked like
Yep.
Mahomes on the field. So I don't know. I think it would be hilarious if on that team it was not Garoppolo or Lance, but it was Brock Purdy out of all the players. That would just be so stupid. It would almost be like what happened to well, they were called the Redskins back then, so I can say it, but when they had Robert Griffin and Kirk Cousins. And you got Kirk
Hmm.
Cousins being your franchise guy, quote unquote. They weren't cool with it. They moved on from him. But
And they were taken in the same draft, if I remember correctly.
yeah, I think you're right.
I think that's one of the few. I mean, it's happened a lot of times, but that was one of the few drafts where I've seen one team take two quarterbacks.
Yeah, that does not happen that often, from what I can tell. I haven't seen it. The last crazy thing this week, Baker Mayfield apparently is fine and not washed at all, not going to the XFL because he came from behind. I think what wasn't it like 17-16 was the final score. He was down
Yes, it was
13
the
points.
same. It was the same score that Tampa had to come back against the Saints a week prior
Yes, yeah.
in the last 3 minutes.
It was back to back games too, right? Because
I believe so.
Tampa's was on Monday night. Yeah, I didn't even
Yep.
think about that. But yeah, Tampa Bay, made the comeback, and then Baker Mayfield made the comeback, and so it kind of raises the question if Baker Mayfield might be a long-term starter there with how bad Stafford was this year. I know my
Hmm.
opinion on it, but how do you feel about that?
Uh, regarding Baker Mayfield, and then I know you asked me about Brady and the Bucks. I'll get back to them after. Um, I think it was hilarious at the time that Baker Mayfield was in that locker room for less than 48 hours. I mean, I remember back in 2016 when Sam Bradford got signed on by the Vikings because they didn't have a solution at quarterback. I can't remember their exact circumstance. And he was in that locker room for less than a week, and they managed to take down the Green Bay Packers right after. I think that might be the most recent memory I have that would be comparable to what Baker Mayfield pulled off. But I think the Rams, from what I've read and heard, are still committed at the moment to Matthew Stafford long term. But I think these last 4 weeks for Baker Mayfield will provide him with ample opportunity to show other teams he's still got it. And I think he's really, regardless of whether he is the Rams' long-term solution at quarterback or not, I think that he is playing for his career right now in these last 4 weeks of the regular season. And seeing as the Rams were the only one that were reportedly interested in scooping him off the waivers, I'd say Baker is definitely under pressure, and he's going to have to perform at eye-popping levels to have a chance to be a starter anywhere next year.
Yeah, for me, I think this was a bit of a fluke that he won that game. I mean, he even threw an interception on the last drive that got overturned.
Yes, he
That's
did.
just how I feel. I I don't think he's legit. I think if he was legit, he would have kept the starting job in Carolina. This just seemed like a really crazy flukish thing to happen. And he played really good at the end of the last drive. I can't take that away from him, but he did nothing the rest of the game. He was missing throws. And I get that he's been there 2 days, but you see the route your receiver's going on, and he's going in a straight line, whatever direction he's going, and he's missing him by 5 yards. And he's doing that
Mm.
like 80% of the time. I I'll be very curious to see how he does the rest of this year. But I think it would be a really bad move for the Rams to stick with Baker Mayfield as their starter past this season. I just don't think that's right. They need to keep Stafford. They need to try to figure out what's going on. Um, they're obviously in a Super Bowl hangover, but
Yeah,
I just don't
pretty
buy into
bad
that.
one. Pretty bad hangover
Yeah, worst hangover we've seen.
in
On
recent memory.
Yeah, so the Tom Brady subject. To go back to that, what do you think is going to happen next year with Tom Brady?
I still think that he stays in Tampa. I just feel, I mean, they got a new head coach in Todd Bowles. They've been a roller coaster team this year. I mean, they're far removed right now at this moment from, they're the Super Bowl they put on versus Kansas City. And there was a week there where after the Saints win, it seemed like it could go swing back in the direction that 2020 went for them, because in 2020 they were 7-5, and though that's a winning record by Tom Brady's standards, you might as well be like, have lost every game at that point. But I think this loss against the 49ers in a blowout fashion is kind of putting them right back to where they were before the game against the Saints. And I think as a longtime fan of Brady, I think it's quite evident that there's just a lot going on around him. I think Bowles is I think Tampa's missing Bruce Arians. I think for
Yeah,
sure. He definitely left a legacy behind and is a very, very accomplished head coach. I think what are the is Tampa still at the top of the NFC South at 6-7 right
by
now? Is
one
that
game over the Carolina Panthers, and it's the Falcons at the same record, but the Panthers hold the tiebreaker.
yeah? I would say Tom Brady is also heavily missing Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah,
I think that is hurt with him retiring and not having that go-to threat in the red zone that was consistently reliable. And I think Chris Godwin was injured for a good part of the season, and Evans has been double teamed a lot from what I've seen, so he hasn't been as effective as he could be. And then there's Tom Brady's personal uh, dilemma saga with his divorce, and I think that was a huge distraction. And that's a big personal event to go through in the middle of an NFL season. And no matter who you are, even if you're Tom Brady, I think that affects you. And I think it's definitely slowed him down a bit.
Yeah, there's no way to get around that for him.
Hmm.
I just feel like the team in Tampa is just broken right now, and I don't. You can't win the Super Bowl with one player, unfortunately. And regardless
Yeah.
of how good Tom Brady is, I don't think they can win a Super Bowl right now with who they are. I think this team was ready to rebuild and move on. I think they were going to see, a big exodus of players, and then Tom Brady came back. Yeah, it's just kind of confused things. Like they don't really know who they are, in my opinion. I think I know you would not like this, but I think the best thing Tom Brady can do, and I've already told you this, so it won't be a shock. The best thing he can do, go out to San Francisco, sign like a 5 year, or sorry, a $5 million contract for 1 year or 2 years, however long you want to go there. But head out there. You went to college out there. Go to the team you
Hmm.
wanted to play for when you came in the NFL. They've got stars all over. He will literally have a super team around him, but don't take a ton of money. You're rich. Make sure they can build a roster around you. And honestly, I think if he did that, I could imagine a scenario where the 49ers go win a Super Bowl over like the Kansas City Chiefs. And you get that one last rematch between those guys, and the 49ers get the revenge. Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl with the team he wanted to play with, and he can go off in the sunset. That's how I look at it. And that's a
Yeah.
lot of speculation, but I
It's
could
also worth
actually
noting.
see that.
It's also worth noting the San Francisco 49ers were Tom Brady's favorite team growing up.
Yeah.
And definitely, I think a lot of people never thought he'd leave New England to go to Tampa, especially. The only thing that he said and recently that would give me hope that he stays is that he loves the Florida area, the Tampa area specifically, and he's really invested down there. And he also has a lot of business on the side, commercials obviously, but I guess I just don't at the moment foresee him leaving that area. But I could be wrong, and I feel like if he goes to San Francisco, I mean, I could see the possibility in that because before this season started, obviously he retired for 40 days. And on top of it, there was rumor that he was supposed to be a minority owner of the Miami Dolphins,
Yep.
who happen to be big rivals of the New England Patriots because they're in the same division in the AFC East. So crazier rumors have swirled, and I definitely am not ruling anything out as a possibility for Brady.
Yeah, I could definitely see him with a new team this next year. And could it still be the Dolphins? I think that's possible. I don't know. It really depends on how like Tua does the rest of this year. But if Sunday
Yeah,
night is how he plays for the rest of this year, that could flip pretty quick. I almost wonder if they trade for Tyreek Hill for Tom Brady. If all those rumors were true, and they literally lost their first rounder because they were manipulating. They were basically
yeah, the
trying to like
Dolphins did.
negotiate with
Yep.
people before they were available to be negotiated with. So
Yeah.
I could see that. I could see him maybe going there, but I think San Francisco is like the dream perfect option. You get your super team and you take a little bit of money, not much, and you go win a Super Bowl there and go beat Patrick Mahomes one more time in the playoffs if it all works out and have
I
your
don't
have
think
your
it'll
eight
be
rings.
Patrick Mahomes. I have
I
another
yeah,
I have another idea of who they're going to face in the AFC next year.
yeah, we both agree on that, but
Yeah.
I think the cooler matchup would probably still be Mahomes and Brady in this next Super Bowl, but yeah, I don't want the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl. I'd rather someone else in Florida go there, and it's not the Dolphins. So yeah, as far as teams that surprised and disappointed this week, you know, it, obviously we want to run to the Jaguars. This is the team that surprised. But to
Hmm.
you, who is the team that surprised you the most?
So this is a team that normally carries high expectations in their locker room. They've got good chemistry, a lot of weapons on offense for sure. and a pretty stout defense, but I went with the Los Angeles Chargers. And the reason I went with them was because this week was a test. They were up against a high-powered offense and a pretty decent defense in Miami. And Miami going into the game was 8-4. The Chargers were sitting at 6-6. I believe they're down at the time of the start of the game. They were down to the Chiefs by 3 games in the AFC West. Um, Justin Sherbert, I'm sorry, goodness sake, Justin Herbert, not Sherbert. Good, he might like Sherbert. I don't know. I'll have to ask him if I ever meet him. I think he had a sharp game, and once again put his pinpoint accuracy on display. I think his stats: he threw for 367 yards, a touchdown, and as it sits right now, and this is pretty good record for him. He has the most passing yards of any quarterback in their first 3 seasons in the league in NFL history. So I thought that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, he might be a good quarterback. I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll have to wait another 5 years, but yeah, he might be the ultimate example right now of a great quarterback that you can't really call like one of the absolute best in the league just because he has no playoff record. He hasn't
Yeah.
made it, and I don't even. I talked to Griffin a lot about this. I cannot blame him for that. His
Mhm.
team is so bad around him, like as far as the coaching specifically, but like his receivers are injured. Mike Williams is like the ultimate boom or bust guy. I mean, he makes Gabriel
Oh
Davis
yeah.
look like a joke. He's either gonna get like 40 points in fantasy or he's gonna get zero. Like I'm sorry you have him on your team.
Mhm.
But he's so hit or miss. Keenan Allen's been out all year. They've got Austin Eckler, who's basically their leading receiver every year. The defense
Yes.
had a big game, but
Yes,
a
they
lot of the
did.
year they haven't been that great because they've had all these injuries. Even with all the additions, the Chargers have just been very unfortunate this year, but it'll be really interesting to see whether they charger it or not going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I would say Mike Williams getting healthy and getting back on the field. He had a big game with a touchdown. That was pretty impressive, and some more. And my fantasy team thanks him for that. Um, on both sides of the ball, I mean, Los Angeles just controlled that game. They never gave Miami the lead. And one thing that impressed me that really stood out in that game was the play where Miami had they did shift the momentum momentarily to their side because Jeff Wilson Jr., the Dolphins running back, coughed up the ball, and right as it looked like a Chargers defender was about to pounce on top of it, Tyreek Hill scoops it up and runs it for 57 yards to the end zone, and it looks like I mean, I know he's nicknamed the Cheetah, but it literally looks like he's running past a field of gazelle, just taking off on the run, and the stadium was going nuts, and the Dolphins, that looked like that was their big breakthrough play, but the Chargers weren't phased by it. Herbert got right back on the field, and I believe he answered immediately as well. And I was just really impressed overall by the offensive and defensive performance from the Chargers.
Yeah, it was the battle of the 2020 quarterbacks, and the guy who
Mm-hmm.
pretty much everyone has known is the better quarterback this whole time won the battle. In spite of
Yeah,
the coaching around him. I don't know. I don't
the
like the
Dolphins
coaching.
actually selected to right in front of Justin Herbert before Justin Herbert went to the Chargers. It was one pick before.
Yeah, what 5 and 6 I think.
I think so. Yeah, it was. I kind of felt that it might have been in the back of Justin Herbert's mind because it was only 2 years ago. He was
Yeah,
in the 2020 draft.
yeah. In all fairness, I'm sure he'd rather have Tyreek Hill as his receiver.
Yeah,
Yeah,
who
for
wouldn't?
me, 100%. The team that surprises me the most is got to be the Carolina Panthers. How are they one
Hmm.
game out of the NFC South right now? They're 3-1 in the last 4 games. They don't even have a bad roster. I mean, it's
Hmm.
I've never seen a team that has blown things up, in terms of the coaching and said, "Oh, but we're not going to trade anyone, and we're also going to compete for the playoffs this year." I mean, as disgusting as it sounds, and I don't think this will happen, but there is a chance that the NFC South is represented by Sam Darnold in the NFL playoffs. I, I
That's
don't want to see
insane.
that, but yeah, I mean, Tampa's failing Tom Brady so hard right now that you really wonder if that's possible. And Carolina doesn't have a bad team. They've
Hmm.
got, even with trading Christian McCaffrey away, they still have somewhat of a run game. DJ Moore is obviously a really good player. And then, they had the pick on offensive line, Ika Mekwanu. They've got the defensive stars. Like, they don't have a bad team. And hopefully they get a good coach this offseason, because if they find a quarterback, they should actually be able to lead the NFC South for a while.
Yeah.
That division is wide open after this year, unless Brady returns, and that's only prolonging it for, a year or two. So
Hmm.
I think the Panthers were my big team. How do you
That was
feel?
a good choice.
Yeah, I like him. I don't hate him. I do wish that Jacksonville had a rivalry against them. I think that would have been, really awesome. But yeah, the
Yeah.
NFL didn't set it up that way. For you, who's the team that disappointed you the most?
I went with the Miami Dolphins. Statistically, Tua Tagovailoa had the worst game of his career. He was 10 of 28 for 145 yards, which uh, isn't exactly lighting it up.
Yeah,
Even a full-fledged effort from Tyreek Hill, because I really don't feel like there's much Tyreek Hill could have done differently. I mean, he did everything he could to put them in contention, and back in that game, it wasn't enough. The Chargers just had answers all night to everything. I think it really hurts the Dolphins because with the Buffalo Bills leading their division, and I believe they're the first seed in the AFC right now, talking playoffs, they just gave them more breathing space and room for error. So that's obviously a no-no. Um, I fully believe Miami is still one of the most improved teams this season.
yes.
I think a lot of that has to do with Mike McDaniel, their head coach, and I still can't get over the fact that I feel like he looks more like a video game designer than an NFL head coach. But
He's
jokes
crazy.
aside, yeah, he doesn't seem phased at all. Like in these losses, whether they're close or it's a bad loss, like it's just like basically kind of like as Belichick would say, on to next week, whoever we play next week. So it really, I mean, he has a lot of confidence in that locker room. As a coach, I still think he's should be in the candidate for coach of the, or a viable candidate for coach of the year at the end of this season. For Miami to be 8-5 right now and ahead of the Patriots in the, I think they're ahead of the Jets in the division, aren't they? I think the Bills are the only ones they're trailing. I mean, that's improvement for a team that has struggled for quite a few seasons now to find an identity and answers to the other teams that they couldn't seem to beat within the AFC East.
Yeah, he's gonna have a resume for Coach of the Year, but I think
Hmm.
you and I can think of another coach that should win that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think he likes ice cream. Vanilla is what I hear.
yeah, he's a big vanilla ice cream guy. Every Saturday
Yeah.
night, I think. Speaking of him, the team that disappointed me, Tennessee Titans, and that's why I named this episode like this. Remember the
I
Titans?
thought they
I
were
mean,
pretty good.
they were good for a quarter. I'm not going to say they're a bad football team. I don't think they are. I think there's something broken there, and I think if they get a new general manager, which they are obviously going to now, things can turn around in Tennessee. But
I really think against
man,
the odds
that
that did affect them.
yeah, maybe I mean, it's affected them to the point where like their roster is not good for sure.
Hmm.
Um, but that was just, if you're a Titans fan, that has to be so demoralizing to see. That is the equivalent to me if the Chicago Bears came in the Lambeau Field and just demolished the Packers and trash talked them after the game and said, "We're coming for the division." That's the
I'm,
equivalent, because Tennessee has owned Jacksonville since
hmm.
1999. I won't even go into the details of what happened that year. There's a lot of crazy stuff with that. I mean,
Oh
Jacksonville
yeah.
the point is that if they won the games against Tennessee that year, they're the first undefeated team since the Miami Dolphins of like 1972. And that didn't happen. And ever since, this franchise has been haunted by the Titans. They have not been able to dominate them in a year. And for Jacksonville to go up there and beat them that way, that has to suck if you live in Tennessee. I mean, I saw the meltdowns on Twitter. It was like,
especially in your own stadium.
oh my gosh, yeah, in a place you haven't lost to them since 2013, and that was just
Yeah.
because you had Jake Locker as your quarterback. That's bad. That's really really bad. And yeah, I love seeing the meltdowns on Twitter. There was I think the fan sided guy for the Titans started blocking people. It might not be fan side, but it's one of the fan pages. Just can't take it. It's too much. Having to lose a game to a division rival. And
I think Jacksonville didn't take well to the way they lost to Detroit the week before. That was the one loss that was a blowout loss on the season. And the defense just let Detroit run all over them all game. I mean, we all saw the same thing. And I think the offense even took ownership of what went wrong. And, it was a collected team effort. And I think the sense of urgency was really elevated going into this game. And it was really cool to see them take control of the game as soon as the beginning of the second half. I mean, if you wanted to make a statement about what your new team identity is and what your vision for the team is in the future, I don't know of a better way you could have done that by sending that message to the team that's leading your division right now or in
yeah,
control.
yeah, the thing that I loved, and it brings a smile to my face. I can't say it without smiling. Doug Peterson probably did the coolest thing I have ever heard of a head coach doing. And that
Mm-hmm.
was him showing that video to the team on the history of the rivalry, the trash talk by the Titans before that game. Because so many players that have come here, especially because the rosters had so much turnover, they don't understand like how bad of a history we've had with Tennessee and how much of a rival they are. They've
Yeah.
dominated it the last 20 years. I mean, I think they're 34-22 now after that game against the Jaguars over the course of the franchises. But
That's correct.
Tennessee has no respect for Jacksonville. They expect that they will beat them in every game without trying. And
Mm-hmm.
Doug Pearson's showing them all of that before the game. Oh, it was beautiful. And to see the way that Trevor Lawrence talked to them after when they took the cheap shot at the center, that, yeah, that's
I'm going
like
to go
my
ahead
favorite
and
part of
say
the year.
that Trevor Lawrence was surfing social media and seeing all the people that were saying he might not have that dog in him. And he just, took that personally and just went out and made sure that he put that on full display after the game.
Maybe. I really wonder because he's turned into a completely different guy, it seems like. And he won't say that. And he's right. He is the same guy he was before. But the way he sounds, like, I think he is more confident now. It's just impressive to see the way he's played recently and just to watch him take it to Satan.
Hmm.
Oh, man. That was
I wish I
just
could have heard what he said to
awesome.
that guy. I
Oh, he
wish we
told
could
him,
have
look at
had
the
a.
scoreboard. I know
Oh, did
that.
he?
Yeah, because he was pointing up to
Oh,
the
okay.
scoreboard.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, and they might have wanted to do that because I don't think they were very close to winning that game after the second quarter. But yeah, I
I
I
always
was
think it's
so happy to
funny.
see all that.
It's funny when quarterbacks trash talk because it always seems like they're the ones that manage to get out of the mess that it creates after a game. Like if a quarterback goes and trash talks like a defender and they like start mouthing off, then like a tight end or something or someone that's a different position on the quarterback's team will step in and then they'll start like, getting into it and the quarterback usually is walking away to the sideline. It's kind of like instigating, but it's funny.
Yeah, I I just love that they're demanding respect from the Titans now, and they
Definitely.
they deserve it. If Tennessee cannot learn to respect Jacksonville before that Week 18 game, I think they're not making the playoffs. Lock it
And
in.
we're at home.
Yeah,
That's
they have
the
to come
best
into
part of this. We did
Jacksonville.
this in their stadium and made this statement, and now they got to come to ours and beat us in what could be the game that decides the division.
Yeah, if we can gain one more game on them before, I'm thinking Sunday Night Football. That's got to be
Mm-hmm.
Sunday Night Football. Choosing who the 4 seed is and someone goes home, yeah,
Yep.
that has to be Sunday Night Football. The only way I could see it not being Sunday Night Football, and this was mentioned on Jaguars Happy Hour yesterday, is if Tom Brady is like playing the Falcons for the. I think he played the Falcons last week for the division title. That's like the
Mm-hmm.
only way that Jacksonville wouldn't get on for that. But I could see it. I could see a Sunday Night Football game, and that would be great. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we're gonna go ahead and move on. We've already been talking about the Jaguars, but we're gonna just officially make it all Jaguars. We're gonna talk about all things Duval. All right, so first question I've got for you: the culture in Jacksonville with the big win over the Tennessee Titans. Do you think this is officially changed? Do you think the old culture is gone?
Well, you might not agree with this, but I would say that the old culture was gone before the season started. I know there's been a lot of mishaps, miscues, and mistakes along the way on both sides of the ball, mainly the offense earlier in the season, and then the defense seemingly later in the season has kind of fallen apart. But I think both obviously had a stellar performance this last weekend against the Titans. Um, One thing that caught my eye before this season started was Doug Peterson at the start of training camp telling every one of those players and making eye contact with all of them to get it in their heads that they are going to be playing in January and February.
Yep.
Like, completely get rid of the thoughts of what happened last year, the memories, wipe them out, clean slate, start over, hit the reset button. We're a different team now, and there is a different vision, and it's just, to me, it says a lot about. I mean, Doug Peterson obviously has an incredible resume as a head coach, no arguing that, but it shows his confidence and his ability to lead a team, and I think that locker room has totally bought into his vision for what that team should be, and they respect him as a fearless leader. And following this win against the Titans, I loved what he had to say. There was some celebration there. My favorite part of which was the guy doing the backflip in front of security. I can't
Yep.
remember. I think that was Jenkins, maybe. Was
It
that
was number
Jenkins?
6. I don't know who number 6 is, honestly. It might be Claybrooks.
Might be, but the security guy's the look on his face when he was watching the guy do the backflip and running off in front of him was priceless. But back to Peterson, he basically told the team in the locker room, you guys on both sides of the ball played great complementary football, but he also challenged every player to raise the bar and to tell them that if you can play to this level, you can go higher and to raise the level that you know you're capable of reaching. And to carry the same attitude and the sense of urgency into each of these last 4 games, because every single game matters that's left. As for their aspirations for the playoffs, for the division title, I mean, Peterson is like, he's serious, and he knows that this team it's finding its way, it's coming to life, it's humming, and that there is a decent chance. Oh, I believe an 11% chance right now they make the playoffs.
I think it's higher.
They're
I
not
think,
all. Oh, that's just what the experts say. I think it's
yeah,
higher as well.
I agree with you. I think that is full of baloney because all it's not even about the record. All it is gaining one game on the Titans. That is all they have to do. And
Hmm.
I get what you're saying with the culture. I think that things did start to change. I think, man, there's a few things, and I think there's one part still left that we're gonna see, um, hopefully, be exercised out of the team, in the rest of the year. I think they still have struggled to play against opponents they think they are better than. Um, I do believe that will be gone, but
Yeah.
that's the one thing I think you got to see change still. But I think that the win over Tennessee was like the great finale of the culture
Hmm.
change because that is the one thing that has stuck around with the Jaguars. their entire history since 1999, including 1999, they have not been able to hand it to the Titans. They've not been able to get respect from the Titans. And even the 2017 team that
Hmm.
nearly went to the Super Bowl, they got killed by the Titans both times that year. The only reason why they got to the championship was because they didn't have to play the Titans. I mean, actually, I don't know how many people remember it, but I think it was the Ravens loss, or it was something like that.
Was it the
Forced, I think
Steelers?
the Bengals beat the Ravens. That's what it was, and
Okay.
it knocked the Ravens out and put the Bills in, and set
Hmm.
up the Bills as the number 6 seed. I think it was something weird, and so we didn't have to face Tennessee. We were gonna have to. We could have been knocked out in the wild card that year if things didn't go right. This team, point is, has not been able to beat the Titans, and not been able to do it at least like consistently. And we'll see if they can do that now. But it's been very flukish when they've done it, and for them to go up into Nashville, to treat him the way they did, to dominate that game the way they did, to force 4 turnovers, and for Lawrence to have his best game of his career, for Ingram to have over 150 yards and have his best game, looking
Hmm.
like actual Travis Kelsey out on the field, just in terms of the production, not
Oh
in
yeah.
the way the players play. But um, yeah, it feels like this was the big change for the culture.
Yes. I think the win over the Titans is very special because both sides of the ball, they played complementary football, but I think there was a lot of players, particularly on the defense, that stepped up. I mean, I don't think that they were intimidated at any point in the game or had it in their mind that they were going to lose. And I think Quarterman coming up with that huge strip on Derrick Henry, right as it looked like he was out of bounds, and the ball comes out after Henry's run for, I can't remember what quarter. It was in the first half, but I think he'd amassed like 90 yards or something, or 95. And he was on pace to go over like 200 by the end of the game, which obviously Derrick Henry is a great running back. But I think that was a huge momentum and confidence booster. Guys that I found notable that stepped up: Trayvon Walker, Arden Key had a big game. I think Fadukasi got a sack for the first time in what,
Yes,
a season.
probably ever. He's a
Yeah,
run
he was pretty
stuffer.
happy. He was pretty happy about that, and he kind of had that. He's looking around at the other players on his team, like kind of like the "Hey, did you see what I just did?" Kind of look on his face. That was pretty cool. And then Josh Allen, he played a good game. He got a lot more pressure on the quarterback. I know that's been a question with him this season, but I think he has taken accountability for where things have went wrong, and he definitely stepped up his game. And I think all those guys deserve credit. And I'm not going to forget Andrew Wingard, because Wingard just continues to elevate the level that he plays at on safety each week. And he had a really clutch interception on Tannehill that was super impressive. And I think I'm going to be really interested to see what happens with Wingard these coming seasons, because as he continues to get better, I mean, the guy is playing to be a long-term starter, and safety is a need on the Jaguars, whether it be draft or free agency. So I'll just be really interested to see what the future holds for Andrew Wingard.
Yeah, I think he could be a starter. I don't think he would be your ideal starter, but I
Mhm.
think his best role on the team is to be a rotational guy. I think you need to keep him in games. I don't think you can have him sit on the sideline, because the big thing
Yeah.
with Wingard is how infectious he is to the team. I mean, you saw it in the Baltimore game where he comes out and he's making plays. He's forcing a fumble. We don't win that game without him. I mean,
Hmm.
he's that guy who, yeah, he might get burned. He might have a bad play, but he's also going to make the big plays. He's also going to give your offense an extra opportunity with the ball and stop a drive. Yeah,
Hmm.
I like him. I think he needs to stay around. I think he's absolutely going to stay around. I don't see
I
any
do
way
too.
that guy moves on to another franchise. Heck, I mean, probably freaking retire. Like this is his home.
Yep.
and I hope he stays here for a long time and has a
He
solid role with
definitely
the
acts
team.
like it.
Yeah, he's the next Tyler Shatley.
Hmm.
Honestly, you look at Tyler Shatley, he's been here his whole career. He's just
Yep.
constantly been fighting to have a starting job. He gets in it here, he gets replaced sometimes. He's a rotational guy. He's just kind of all over the place, but he is a Duvalian, you know.
Hmm.
Um Now the big guy of the game, I guess you could argue two people. You got Evan Ingram, but Trevor
Hmm.
Lawrence over the last you don't even have to say the last month. It's really month and a half now. I mean, how do you feel? Like, you think he looks like the best quarterback in the NFL right now?
I think over the last 5 weeks, he has really elevated his game. They've gone 3-2, dropped one to the Chiefs and one to the Lions. Those were different types of games. But I think earlier in the season, Lawrence was he was overthrowing receivers and his tight ends a lot. There was kind of some critical errors made. I remember the game in London against Denver. They were right next to the end zone and had a chance to score, and Lawrence uh, threw threw one into a defender's hands rather than just running out of bounds. And I don't even think that it was third down. I think they had at least one more down to get it in.
It was like
And I know
first.
that I remember the post game conference after that, and he was just looked visibly ashamed of that play. And I think that was really the switch on his season where he knew moving forward, it's time to limit critical errors. Don't make a bad play worse. I remember, Peterson was emphasizing that with Lawrence and telling fans to be patient with him and that, this is the future of the franchise. This is the guy that they went after with the first pick in the last draft for a reason because they saw the massive potential this guy has. And I think Trevor overall has looked and played like the best quarterback, at least in the last 5 weeks. I think that he's had 10 touchdowns, zero interceptions. On the season, he's sitting at 20 touchdowns and six interceptions on the year versus 12 touchdowns and 17 interceptions from last year as an entire season. So the progress is evident.
Yeah, and I think you're right. The Denver game was the switch. He was angry with himself after that, and since he's the only turnovers he's had are fumbles, and I think he's
Mhm.
had one, if I recall correctly. I think that was just the Ravens game. He nearly lost one. Actually, I think it was two. He's had two he's lost, but we don't really consider fumbles that much unless it's a huge problem with the quarterback like Matt Ryan this year.
Mhm.
Um, but Lawrence has looked like the best quarterback. I think over this season, and you discount some things for everyone because everyone has off games. I think Jalen Hurts is the number one guy in the NFL right now. The way
Yeah.
he's played, the way he's elevated the Eagles. I mean, he has 32 total touchdowns. He's like almost 700 rushing yards. He's got, I think, about the same amount of yards as Lawrence passing, and
Yeah.
he's got only 3 interceptions on the year. He's just been really good, and you've seen him also be clutch. You've seen him step up and be a huge leader in Philadelphia. So I think like you can very fairly say that Jalen Hurts is the top guy right now. I think
Definitely.
Mahomes is he if he plays to his ceiling, if he doesn't turn over the ball or make the dumb decisions, he's the best quarterback in the NFL. But I think
Mhm.
that Lawrence, as we see him continue to get better, I think his ceiling is right there with Mahomes. And honestly, people can say that's crazy. I cannot believe that's crazy because for Lawrence, this is a player who's touted as a generational prospect. It is in some minds the best prospect since like John Elway or maybe even ever in the draft. The ceiling is unlimited. And we
Yeah.
saw him actually make some Mahomes like plays this last game where he's
Definitely.
moving around the pocket. The one on the left, I think it was to Agnew, where he's like shifting around the pocket and he just like throws it real quick without hesitation at the end of the
Yeah.
play, and it's a perfect throw. And
The
you
game
see him
is
just with so much confidence now. I think he's right there. And if I could choose out of every quarterback in the NFL who I want to be my long term starter, I'm choosing
Trevor
Lawrence.
Lawrence.
I can't choose anyone else. I think Mahomes is right there too. I think Hurts is right there too. But I also like who Lawrence is as a person, obviously, and what he brings to Jacksonville. I have to choose him.
Definitely. I would say Mr. 81 and 3 is back, and he is here to stay. And some notable things that I have noticed is Trevor Lawrence, the game is slowing down for him. I mean, he is more confident than ever. One of the notable plays in the last game, there was a play, I can't remember who the defender was, but literally coming at him full speed, and Lawrence literally just steps to the side, and the dude runs right past him. And Lawrence makes a great throw to, I can't remember which play it was, but it's just like, and then he was on his feet more. The whole philosophy behind not making a bad play worse. He wasn't trying to force a throw that wasn't there or, put it in a defender's hands. Instead, he took off and gained some yards on his feet. And that was something that we haven't he's shown off in college how fast he is on his feet. I mean, he ran away from an entire defense in one of his college highlights when he played at Clemson, but you haven't seen a lot of that in the NFL because of the transition and the new system that he's under with Doug Peterson and just their move to find their new identity.
Yeah, he's definitely shown a lot of improvement in his pocket awareness because we saw so many
Yes.
times where it's like he has no clue who's around him and then he fumbles the ball because someone hits him
Hmm.
from behind. And some of that's the tackle play too, or the guard play. Usually it's the tackle play. Um, but yeah, he's improved in like every category, and the best thing I think recently has definitely got to be the swagger to him, the confidence. It's not cockiness, but it's a
Yeah.
good confidence. And I talked about that I think last week in some of the issues the Jaguars had. They have to choose confidence over cockiness. They can't underestimate opponents, and I sure hope they don't do that after this Cowboys game. I think they're going to take Dallas seriously because it's Dallas. They're 10-3, but the
Hmm.
Jets game, that's one. Even though the Jets will at least be 500 that game, it's easy for teams to not take them seriously, but they have a really good roster. Houston, ever since I've been a fan, we have never beat Houston.
Hmm.
It's crazy to think that, but it's true. Despite how bad Houston has been for so many of those years,
Well, they're up
the
next
confidence
to
has grown.
be taken down.
Yeah, I do believe that. I think they're gonna throttle them on the road.
I think Jacksonville, I mean, this is a young team on both sides of the ball. Overall, aren't they one of the youngest teams in the league?
They are one of the youngest.
I think there's always something new for them to process and to be challenged by. Early in the season, they had a hot start. I think they were 2-1 in the front of the AFC South, and then they had what was it, a 6-game losing streak. So you could argue that one of their first big challenges was figuring out how to win a close game. It didn't seem like they were anywhere close to figuring that out for several weeks. And then they did it. And all of a sudden, that's no longer like the major issue. The next issue to me seemed to be the ability to play complementary football for both sides of the ball to fire on all cylinders the entire game and, be able to close out a win that way. And I would say moving forward, what I would guess their next big challenge is to have two consecutive massive statement wins. And they're going to have their opportunity to do that this weekend when Dallas comes into Jacksonville Stadium.
Yeah,
A
they're
10 and 3
bouncing back
team.
and forth. They're
Mhm.
winning, then they're losing, and the nice thing to think about though, if you remove that 5 game streak where they lost, where it's all these close games that at some point they dominated, they were
Yeah.
in full control in every single one of those games at a point. If you remove them, this team's 5-3.
Yep.
They're not a bad team. I don't think they're as bad as their record is. I think the biggest thing that's plagued them, honestly, well, earlier it was Lawrence just trying to get back to who he is, but it's the players on defense that are supposed to be so much better than they've been playing. And that's what
Hmm.
gives me some confidence for next year is that like you get guys like Walker and Lloyd and even Darius Williams on the outside now. Thank God they made that move.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, it made
I
so
noticed
much more
that.
sense. Yeah, they put Trayvon Walker's hand in the ground. They did
Yep.
things to improve it. But there's guys on the defense that are going to get a lot better this next year. You got Muma at linebacker as well.
Yeah,
You have like pieces there, and they'll improve it a little bit in maybe even free agency, but the draft it'll get better. But I have
definitely,
confidence long term in all those things. So
definitely. I
yeah,
think Mike Caldwell stepped up his defensive game plan and the play calling this last weekend against the Titans too, because the defense really got after it. I mean, they pressured Ryan Tannehill a lot, and they had an answer for Derrick Henry even after amassing nearly 100 yards. I think it was in the first quarter of the game, which was on track to be like a record, I believe, statistically for Derrick
oh, it
Henry,
easily would have been.
as if he needed to set more records against the Jags.
Yeah,
But they stopped him. Quarterman came up with that crucial strip on him,
Duval and
completely
Duval
reversed
crime.
the momentum. Yeah, it was. It's crazy to think this team is also doing this without a number one receiver. I mean, Zay Jones and Marvin Jones. I mean, Christian Kirk. They're all talented guys, but I feel like on a lot of other teams, they wouldn't be a number one, especially on like proven teams, like elite teams. So for it really is a testament to the new inspired creativity. I feel like on the offense, on the play calling there, and the game plan, and just having answers. I think Lawrence in his post game press conference was talking about they had answers for everything, and they had a really good week of practice, and they're confident with the playbook that they have moving forward. And it's really cool to see them have this success, without Calvin Ridley, and who I'm very much looking forward to seeing on the field with them next year. I wish he was there right now. I think he should be there right now, but can't do anything about that, unfortunately.
Yeah, stop betting while you're away from your NFL team. I guess. What a
Yeah.
crime.
I mean,
I
look at
will
it
say
this
this
way.
fun fact real quick. Tyreek Hill said that Christian Kirk was a top 5 receiver in the league the other day.
I did not know that.
Yeah, yep, he
That's
said that.
pretty.
And
It's a pretty big name to be saying that.
Kirk is in my mind, he's a 1B or a 2A. And
Hmm.
if you don't think about it in that way, he's an elite slot receiver. He's like
Definitely.
second in the league right now, I think, from the slot because you just got Cooper Cup at one. It's hard
Hmm.
to go up against Cooper Cup, but when you have him with Calvin Ridley and whatever they do at third receiver, if it's a mix of Zay Jones and Jamal Agnew, maybe that'll look pretty good next year. And you got Evan Ingram probably coming back. He wants to stay here, get drafted tight end. There's a lot they can do with that offense where there's just going to be so many places he can go with the ball. We do got to get moving along though on some of these topics. I got two
Last
more.
thing I say is I was so
Yeah.
hurt for Jamal Agnew that he didn't get that kick return
Oh
touchdown.
yeah.
That was horrible.
Phantom holding call. Yeah,
Yeah.
the calls in that game were kind of obnoxious, and they got more like they're doing bad stuff against both teams for part of it
Hmm.
too. But yeah, it was just obnoxious how many calls they were throwing out. I mean, they kept trying to kill drives over the course of
For
that game,
sure.
and then at the end they started throwing them on the Titans when they lost because I think the Titans they didn't have like a single penalty until like the third quarter. It was pretty late
Hmm.
in the game. That's the third
It was
time that's
mostly
happened in a
Jacksonville.
Jacks game. Yeah,
Yeah.
they just throw them at him for every single thing. Um, but yeah, the next thing I want to talk about, we have a really interesting situation on the offensive line. We have the pass blocking, and I just saw a stat the other day where the Jaguars' offensive line just set a record or tied a record for the most games in a season without allowing a sack. And I think some of
6.
that,
Yep.
yeah, six. I think some of that is Lawrence and his pocket awareness now. I think when he's played really good, you see that. You see him able to elude players. But the other side of this is that the run blocking is awful. And I
Hmm.
don't know if I've seen this on an NFL team. I'm sure it's happened, but I can't recall one. And so it raises the question for the Jaguars, where do they need to make changes to the offensive line in this offseason?
I think that they're. I think they could use another option for an offensive tackle. Obviously, you have Jawan Taylor in question if he's going to be with the team or not next year. Could
Tag
walk
and
in free
trade.
agency.
Tag and trade to get a pick.
Yeah. Then there's rumor Walker Little's likely slide into his spot. I know people have mixed feelings on him. However, really to me, it just depends on where they draft because it seems like their draft position changes every week. I mean, one week you're nearly third and they're going to be in the top 10. The next week, okay, maybe they're in the top 15. The next week, well, maybe they're in the top 20. It's like a lot of it's going to hinge on these last 4 games. And if they make the playoffs, then they're going even deeper in the draft because they're probably going to knock out some games in the playoffs. I'm confident they can do that.
Yep.
But I think one of their enticing options, and the kid is really young, but there was a few people, at least one analyst that projected Jacksonville to maybe take him was, I try not to butcher his name here,
I think I know
Olu
you're. Yep.
Fashanu.
He is not declaring for this draft. That
Oh, he's
is,
not?
yeah, unfortunately not, because he was the
Okay.
name floated around. And this kind of, we can transition into this last question with this too. I agree. Like there needs to be changes made. Um, and my favorite
Skaronski was the other one I
prospect,
was going to
yes,
mention.
he is my favorite prospect for this next year
Hmm.
because the first thing I like to look at, and it's not going to matter a ton, but I think it's important for the culture and wanting to root for a team. And one of the reasons why I love rooting for Jacksonville is because there are so many good people on this team, just
Hmm.
morally sound people that are so easy to support. And I genuinely believe in the entire NFL that Jacksonville has the best people in this organization as far as the players and the staff. But I look at like Pierce Gronski's interviews and stuff about him. He's an outstanding person, high character
Hmm.
guy. He is a really good culture fit right off the bat. But the important part, the intriguing part with him that obviously matters more because it's the game, he can play every single position on the offensive line. And there's even a
Hmm.
prospect behind him who can do the same thing as Paris Johnson Jr. from Ohio State. But Peter
Yes.
Skoronski, he can play anywhere. So my reasoning for why I really like him at the first pick is first of all because I think the offensive line is a little overrated. If you
Yeah.
cannot have a run game, you're going to look like what the Buffalo Bills used to look like, and every team's going to know you're going to pass. And you're wasting a good running back's career if you cannot run the ball. So if you bring in Skoronski, the bare minimum that he does the first year is take over left guard. And
Hmm.
there's obviously some size concerns with him, but I think it's going to be kind of like Penny Sewell, where it's not going to matter too much. He's still going to be really good as a tackle. But the first thing he'll do is he'll challenge Walker Little. Walker Little has to
Hmm.
earn the right tackle job. He does not just get it because it's by default, there's no competition for him. And so hopefully Walker Little earns that job. Regardless of how that goes, though, Cam Robinson, after 2023, after the next season, he saves you $16.5 million to release. So you have Skoronski, who's played left tackle in college for a while, who
Hmm.
immediately in his rookie season pressures Cam Robinson. He has to be worth $16.5 million to be retained. If
So
he
you draft
cannot
him
play
for a year
well,
to develop.
yeah, he
Yep.
he's essentially he's a universal plug on the offensive line, and you force everyone on the line to be better because they won't have their job if they aren't better. You have a replacement. And yeah, the one way that doesn't work is if Walker Little and Cam Robinson both suck. But I don't think that's going to
Hmm.
happen. I think one of them's going to be fine. Probably Cam Robinson in all reality, but I also think he'll probably get cut after that second year unless he wants to renegotiate. So that's the pick I really like, my favorite prospect in the draft. But for yourself, I mean, who's your guy?
I it's kind of hard to choose. I have two guys that I chose, and it's like I was saying earlier, I just don't know where Jacksonville's going to be at draft position wise, and obviously it's going to fluctuate who's available and who's not, and things will obviously change after the combine and on draft day there will be trades, and it's just like it's all really hard to predict. But I went with two guys. My first one, Michael Mayer, uh,
Yeah.
tight end, huge bodied tight end. And I'm going to go ahead and say this. If Jacksonville manages to get their hands on Michael Mayer, I'm willing to bet that he never has to contemplate retirement to get out of being traded to the Lions. And you could ask Rob Gronkowski how that feels because he's got his seal of approval.
Yeah, little Gronk or mini
some
Gronk.
things that some things that pop out about Mayer. He's 6'4", he's 265 pounds, big guy. Very stockish type of run. Great downfield blocker. Excels in picking up yards after the catch. Great burst off the line. Creates separation very well. That and he's very hard to bring down in open space, and he can muscle his way through defenders. And also, I don't know. Oh, I already said he's a. Oh no, I didn't say this part. But he's a ball hawk in the red zone. Very reliable red zone
That's very
target,
important.
which can transform an offense, as you've seen with the Gronkowski, Kelsey. There's so many other tight ends you could name off, but it's very, I think, important to have a good tight end, as Ingram demonstrated this last week, and really stepped up for the offense and Lawrence.
Yeah, I like him as well. Michael Mayer is going to be a good prospect. Need to have a pretty cool shirt we can make if he comes here. Might really
Sounds like
honor
Michael
Michael Mayer.
Myers on Halloween, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be pretty fun to work with. But I think he would be a great prospect. It really comes down to how big your needs are at other positions, and at the same time, you don't draft off of need. You hope you hit that in free agency. But it's going to be hard for Jacksonville to sign free agents because they're not going to have a ton of money. They're going to have to renegotiate. They might even have to renegotiate Christian Kirk's salary because, I mean, him or Foye Lucan, because those are the guys you're super confident in being here for a long time. You know, you might have to push money down the road, just the way it's looking. But
Yes.
yeah, I like Michael Mayer. My other favorite prospect, um, and actually, before I mention him, the home run in this draft is Jalen Carter. If he's
Definitely.
sitting there, I don't know where Jackson will pick, but I highly doubt they're out of range for Jalen Carter. If somehow he was available, that's the home run because you have an incredible interior defensive lineman who allows Walker and Allen to get more sacks. So I'll just blanket statement that he would be the best guy, but he's not going to be available where we're picking unless we tank the rest of the year. And this team is not tanking. My second guy, though, is Darnell Washington.
Good one.
And to me, he's the second best tight end in this draft class. You can get him in the second or third round, but the way he looks to me, he reminds me a lot of Travis Kelce.
Mm-hmm.
I, Travis Kelce is the greatest tight end of all time. Honestly, I
Yes.
think that's very fair to say. And you look at the season he's having, I don't think you can argue against that. And I'm not
Hurts
saying
to
Darnell
say as a
Washington.
Gronk fan, but it's true.
Yeah, unfortunately, Washington is not going to be the greatest tight end of all time. You know, without something amazing happening, but he has that same kind of look. Like he's a really dang good blocker right off the bat. And if you get
Mm-hmm.
Skoronski and Washington, your run game is so much better. Right there, you're already giving Etienne a huge chance. And then Washington helps with the pass blocking. Skoronski does that as well. But Washington is balanced. He can do the blocking, but what he's shown this year and what people questioned about him was whether he could catch the ball. And you've seen him
Mm-hmm.
come down with some really awesome catches. You've seen him develop. And he's done that in the midst of having Brock Bowers at Georgia as well and Eric Gilbert. I mean, Georgia's like tight end university right now. They have a lot of prospects out there that are going to go high in the draft. I mean, Brock Bowers is the next big guy, probably more than Michael Mayer, based off
Mm-hmm.
how people have talked about him. I like Darnell Washington a lot because You get a guy who's developing in the pass game, who will probably be balanced. You put him with Evan Ingram. You defenses will not know what you're doing when Washington's on the field because he can do anything. And
Hmm.
you pair him with a coach that is a tight end guy. You know Doug Peterson for the tight ends, and ideally he has two of them, and this would be the second. And you see Trevor Lawrence also working more with tight ends now with all the passes to Ingram this last game.
Yeah, and there was a
I
few to
really
Dan
like
Arnold
that.
too. Yep.
Yeah, Dan Arnold even got involved. I just think that's a really good like value pick and a player who can be really dang good for the Jaguars.
Hmm. No, I agree. He's a solid option, and I'd be very happy if the team got him as well.
Yeah, it would be a
Or
good pick.
not as well, but if they got him in round 2 or 3. Well, it's looking like round 2 right now, I think.
Yeah, especially with where Jacksonville's drafting, I don't think they could get him late in round 3. I just don't see that
Yeah.
happening. Plus, this is probably a guy who's going to test out really well at the combine, shoot up boards, and get
Oh, yeah.
overdrafted. So, second round's probably where he's going to go. Um, yeah. So, you got anything else to add on the on our all things Duval section?
I had one more guy I was looking at,
Okay.
and I would be ecstatic if the team could get this guy in the first round. Keely Ringo.
Oh yeah.
Um, Man and zone coverage experience. He's 6'2", 205 pounds, so he's got the build for a solid cornerback. It seems to be on his college tape that he sticks to some of the most elite receivers like glue. I mean, the guy does not allow a lot of separation by any means. He's extremely physical. He's a ball hawk. He can make plays in the backfield, and his tackling ability is insane. He's got long arms. He can bring a receiver down, and I think he's a perfect complement of a cornerback that could be a shutdown cornerback with Tyson Campbell. And I think to have Tyson Campbell and Keely Ringo on the same defense in Jacksonville, I mean that I don't know if that doesn't create excitement for the Duval fans. I'm not sure what will. But you also got the chemistry that Keely has with Trayvon Walker as they both played at Georgia. That's a
Yep.
good thing, I think.
And Tyson
But
Campbell.
yep, Campbell as well. So I think that would be really super awesome if they could get him.
Yeah, that could be a really good pick. And one thing I also love about Ringo is that he steps up in the big moments. He got the game sealing pick six interception in the national championship last year. And
Yeah,
man, were we not talking about needing that kind of a player on the defense like a month ago when we couldn't finish
definitely.
games? He would be a
Yep.
really good pick. The only thing I have to worry about with the cornerback position is that like Darius Williams could end up just being the outside guy next year. That's where he's
Hmm.
supposed to play. I don't think he's a slot guy. I think he's better in his natural position on the boundary. So I'm kind of torn on cornerback right now because I like some of these prospects. My favorite guy is Devon Witherspoon.
Hmm.
Um, but I also like Ringo a ton. I mean, he's a better prospect, but I like the value on Witherspoon a little more. I like who he is as a person and how he
Yeah,
cares about football. But yeah, it really depends on what Jacksonville does there. If Darius Williams is the answer on the outside long term, and I hope he is because that would help out this team a lot if they have that guy in the building right now.
definitely.
Yep. Well, let's go ahead. We're going to look forward to the week to come and check out this matchup. It's going to be a big game against the Cowboys, 10-3. Not
Very
coming
big
off a
game.
very, yeah, not coming off a very impressive game against the Texans, but you can't underestimate them. The
Yeah.
Cowboys just have a great team. Micah Parsons is going to be hard to stop. Hard to stop. This team is going to have to step up with the offensive line, and Trevor Lawrence is going to have a huge game.
Yeah. I think the one game I look at that gives me a lot of hope for their chances and well, just their game plan against Dallas is the Baltimore game. Because
Exactly.
Baltimore's defensive unit was one of the top in the league. So is Dallas's. I can't remember if Dallas is second in the league or I don't remember where they stack up, but they're very high. One of the top tier defenses in the league. Um, and I think it's going to be a huge challenge. And I think when it comes to Trevor Lawrence, he's had big games against Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson. You know, he's dropped a few to Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, who are just the two best. I mean, two MVP candidates on the year. So
He
I
did do
guess that,
better than Mahomes though in the Chiefs game.
yeah,
I will say that
yeah,
he was a better quarterback in that game.
yes, he was. Unfortunately, the defense just didn't have an answer for the Chiefs.
Yeah,
But they've
it
since
just went
improved,
wrong.
and I hope they continue trending in that direction. And the offense could have made more plays too and answered quicker, started faster for sure. And I think the one that Christian Kirk dropped that Lawrence pitched to him when they started the game with an onside kick and got it was
Yeah,
that kind of hurt too. So,
yeah, it was a killer. I think I think Lawrence is gonna be challenged. I could see a pick in this game. I could see him throw his
hmm
first since week 9. I don't know if he will. He could just play a fantastic game against a really dang good defense. I think where we're gonna see the turnovers is still gonna be against Dallas. We just saw it with
hmm
Dak Prescott this last week where he's making bad decisions. He's turning over the ball, and the Cowboys are just being inefficient. They're looking past the game. And if Dallas doesn't really know what's going on in Jacksonville, it's pretty easy to look past a 5-8 team. So that's what I hope.
hmm
I hope they look past this game. I hope they're looking forward to their next Eagles matchup, which I think is the week after, if I remember correctly. So
I believe so.
that
Yeah.
it's coming up. They might not be that focused on this game, knowing that team. They buy into a lot of hype. Um, but Dallas, they've still got two good running backs. I think Pollard is better, but
hmm
they've got two guys who can control the game if they get ahead. Jacksonville needs to stay in this. They can't let it get out of hand. We need a run game. We need
Yeah,
Travis Etienne
definitely.
to be able to play well. Unfortunately, he's just kind of been screwed this last week. I
hmm
mean, you look at every one of those plays where he got the ball, there was no chance to get yards. And it wasn't for lack of trying. He just had nowhere to go. He got stuffed constantly.
Yes. Yeah, and they had an answer for Travis Etienne. He's one of the most potent weapons on that offense. I mean, his evolution as a player on the season is incredible. And I think next year, I think Travis Etienne is going to be one of your top running backs in the league, if not the top. I mean, the guy is only going to continue to get better. And
Yeah,
there's going to be games where they have a good game plan for him. You could say that about the best running backs that have ever played the game. And I feel like that position in general just continues to evolve. You know, there's always someone that brings some kind of new element to it or some new trick. And I think ETN, especially having that chemistry with Lawrence from Clemson, you know, for them to be playing on the same offense, you know, in the NFL is really cool. Same team. Um, but I definitely expect big things out of him against Dallas. And I really think this is not only is this a challenge to stack wins, you know, consecutively for Jacksonville, but it's also them not relying on the Titans dropping some games to get back into contention. If they win
yeah.
this, it's a huge statement win over a 10-3 team. Yes, has their struggles, but still is a playoff contender and one of the NFC's juggernauts at the moment. I would argue, um, but I see Jacksonville potentially coming out of this with a win. I'm confident they will win. I'll put it that way.
I agree. I think this game will be pretty neck and neck, but I think Jacksonville's going to be a really good team. They can lose this. I'm not saying it's not
hmm
possible. And one thing that's going to hurt is that the home field advantage will probably be taken away quite a bit because there's going to be a lot of Dallas fans traveling. There always
hmm
is. So that's going to hurt a bit. But we got Jackson Deville on our side, man. He's elite
Home field
mascot.
advantage.
Yeah, that's the biggest part of this game. But I
Maybe he can
think
get in his American Speedo again and distract Dak Prescott a little bit, or the kicker.
he should be wearing it. I think he wears it all month. So
That's
yeah,
great.
that's big advantage. I think the Cowboys are gonna have some turnovers this game. I think
Yep.
the Jaguars are gonna capitalize. I think Lawrence is gonna play a good game, and there's a chance that if and I think Tennessee has traveled the West Coast out to Los Angeles to play the Chargers. If Jacksonville wins this and Tennessee loses, Jacksonville only
One game
has
out.
to win. Well, they had that game last week. They
Hmm.
right where they need to be. They play the Jets. They can beat them. Jets are having quarterback issues. They play the Texans. You know they're going to be pissed off at the Texans. You know they
Hmm.
want to kill the Texans. And the Texans are tanking right now anyway. They're trying to get that
Yeah.
first overall pick. Problem is they
Oh
might have
yeah.
it locked up by then. So they might just want to beat Jacksonville. These are the only games they prepare for every year is when they play Jacksonville. But you got that, and then you play the Titans at home. I
Hmm.
right now, call me crazy. I think the Jaguars will finish this season 9-8 and make the playoffs, and they'll be
I think the
hosting a
exact
game in
same thing.
Jacksonville.
Don't think you're crazy at all.
Yeah, I think it's very possible. I think the 11% chance of making the playoffs is baloney. They could lose one,
Hmm.
they could blow one. It's absolutely possible, but I think when you look at the schedule and all that, this is the big game. If they can win this, they can run the table. So
Yeah.
that's how I feel about this is huge. This is
I
one of the
had
biggest games of the year.
I had two last things to add to their matchup against Dallas. One of the biggest reasons I want to see Jacksonville win this is so we could see Trevor Lawrence's face on one of those just checking to see if we still them boys memes.
Oh
I think
yeah,
that'd be
oh yeah,
beautiful. Yeah.
and maybe
And that's the
Dak.
first thing
Yeah,
I'm going to share if they win.
maybe Dak Prescott can have like a social media tirade like Lamar Jackson did. That would be pretty
Oh my
cool.
gosh, that was
Yeah,
derogatory, man. I
I
couldn't
remember
believe
when I
that.
used to wish the Jaguars got Lamar Jackson at quarterback. I was literally watching the draft and asking them to get Lamar Jackson. But yeah, I don't feel that way anymore. I think we've might
You
have a
couldn't
better
have known he'd
player.
do that though.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, it would have been better for Jacksonville back then, but we got the right guy. We got the perfect
Yeah.
guy for Jacksonville.
The,
You got
the
another thing?
last thing I wanted to add was that no matter what happens, Dak Prescott's overpaid.
True. Can't doubt that. We're getting more bang for our buck right now anyway. You can't doubt that one.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, we will go ahead and move on and look around the NFL and some of these upcoming games, rapid fire this, shoot through them. So, the rest of the week 15 schedule. First game we've got is the Ravens and Browns. Who you got?
I'm gonna have to say this late in the season, the Ravens got to win that one. I mean, they're playoff hopeful, obviously, and I don't know what seed they hold, but they're always a threat, so they can't drop one to a team like Cleveland.
Yeah, Watson sucks. They're going to lose. They screwed up
Yeah,
with the
but
trade.
he's.
That's
I
simple.
mean, he still has a lesser suspension than Ridley, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
good job,
and
Goodell.
it's crazy, just insane to me how he just so happened to come back for the Texans game.
Yep.
Apparently that was based on precedents, even though there's like never been an 11 game suspension in the history of the NFL. But sure, we'll all eat your or drink your Kool Aid or whatever the heck the saying would be. Bills and
Yeah.
Dolphins.
Oh man, I'm gonna say Dolphins. The Dolphins are pretty. I would say they're pretty pissed off after this last win, or I'm sorry, this last loss against the Chargers, and I think the sense of urgency is gonna be there. And the Bills have picked up the pace and gotten back into being the juggernaut of the AFC they are. They hold the number one seed, but there's gonna be an upset this week somewhere, and I feel like it's gonna be a big one, and I feel like Miami is gonna have their chance to do that. So we'll see what happens.
The Bills are also going to be pretty mad going into that game. You got to remember that too. I mean, you remember the dude like throwing down his clipboard at the table when they
Yeah,
lost in week 3? Yeah, it
yeah,
was like the offensive coordinator. Apparently, that guy's never lost a game in his life based off that reaction. He had no idea what to do. I think
yeah.
the
Tom
Bills.
Tom Brady
Yeah,
even said something about him on social media. I think he said something like, "Dude, I don't even get that mad." He's like breaking tablets and screaming at his teammates.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I think this game could go either way, but I think the Bills are going to pull it together. I think the Bills honestly will probably get it figured out by the end of the year. I think they're going to go back to who they were by the playoffs.
They
Same
could.
same for the Chiefs too. And that leads into the next game, Chiefs and Texans. I mean, do we need to talk about this?
I think
I'm
the
sorry,
Chiefs are gonna have that
Houston.
one in about the first 3 minutes of the first quarter.
Well, they might play with them like they did Denver. To be fair, I
They
don't know.
could.
I think this will be the one where they blow them out. I don't want to say that. Last week I said that I thought Mahomes would throw a pick, and they threw three. So I'm sorry, Griffin. Yeah, the Chiefs will blow them out 49-0. There you go. Chargers and Titans traveling out to the
Chargers.
West
We
Coast.
got to get some help from Los Angeles, and they
Yeah,
played extremely well this last Sunday night. So they got to keep their momentum rolling. Get as high of a seed as possible going into the playoffs because they're not in the hunt. They are a playoff team right now, aren't they? They're in the top 7
yeah.
seed wise. I think
They
they're
might have
7th.
been knocked out by New England, actually, if I
No, I
recall
think they're still ahead
correctly.
of New England. I looked at it the other night. I think they're right ahead of New England and the Jets because the Jaguars are right behind New England and the Jets. So I think the Chargers have the last seed right now, and they're going to be looking to keep that. So or move
Yeah,
up, obviously.
they're better than New England anyway. But yeah, they've got to get
Hmm.
ahead of them. It's a big game for them. I think the Chargers will win, but I will not be shocked if Tennessee pulls some dark magic and wins that game. That's the kind of thing they do every year. The hope, though, is that they're broken, and they
Hmm.
very well may be broken. I hope they implode the rest of the season. Regardless, the last game will matter unless Jacksonville cannot make up ground. They cannot lock up the division before week 18. Because if Jacksonville ran the table and Tennessee lost every game before that, if Tennessee won the last game, they're still in. So it doesn't even
Yes.
matter. Like Tennessee, the only thing they need to do to have the lock before is just not lose one more game than the Jaguars. But yeah, I think the Titans are going to put up a fight there, but I think the Chargers still get it done. They've got a better quarterback. Things are unraveling in Tennessee. I hope it continues that way. Raiders and
Definitely.
Patriots. I've actually I didn't even no. Okay, I got Raiders on this one. How about
That's
yourself?
an interesting one. I would say, yeah, I'm going to say Raiders. The Raiders are just so hit and miss this year. They've obviously had a hugely disappointing season. And, I mean, I think that was pretty evident when Derek Carr was crying during his post-game press conference. Can't remember which team that was against. It might have been the
Yeah,
Jaguars. Wasn't
and
that the
then
Jaguars?
Raiders. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's crazy
Oh,
how Raiders fans have the audacity to trash talk Jacksonville after that. It's bizarre to me, but yeah,
so we've made the Raiders and the Titans cry. So that's an accomplishment.
yeah. I did see the Titans guy crying. I actually felt bad for that guy. He seemed like a decent human being in just an awful place. But that's also how I feel about Derrick Henry.
Definitely.
Vikings and Colts. Vikings.
Oh,
Colt.
Vikings got to win this one. After losing to
Yeah,
Detroit, they're going to have probably a similar week of practice to what Jacksonville had before the Titans. They're going to be fired up and amped up to go win. So I don't see the Vikings dropping that one.
yeah.
Especially
I'm
what's the record now? 10-3.
10-3. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
they've got to win it. And you've got Lions and Jets.
You said the
I've got to
Lions
go
keep going.
Lions.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Jets. We don't even know who's starting at quarterback. It's not looking good for him.
No, not
So
at all. Good thing for
yeah,
Jacksonville.
and yeah, we play them 4 days after this game. So
Yep.
something to consider if you're a Jaguars fan. You better be if you're watching the show. By the way, um, they're 5-8 right now. There could be a 4 game span where they go from 5-8 to 7-8. We will know
Hmm.
very, very fast where Jacksonville will sit at the end of the season because the games are going to be rapid fire. I think they're going to win them both though. Um, the Lions, I've got them though, and then you got Cardinals and Broncos. Um, Wilson could be out in this one, concussion
Yeah.
protocol.
If and Kyler Murray's out for the rest of the season with a torn ACL.
Are you
So this
serious?
one, yeah, he tore his
I didn't even
ACL
see
against the
that.
Patriots. Yep.
Shoot.
Yeah, he's gone for the season.
Wow. I don't know who
This is
wins
like
then.
your head scratcher game of the week where it could go either way. I'm gonna have to say
Broncos.
it comes down to who has more weapons, and I feel like Jerry Jeudy, regardless of the loss, had a big game. But then you got DeAndre Hopkins on the Cardinals receiver. Talk about receivers. I don't have knowledge of how good either defense is, honestly. But between the two, I'm gonna say I'm gonna have to go with who's Arizona's backup, their quarterback.
No clue.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna go Arizona.
Okay. I'm going Broncos. And here's the reason why I think this is very valid. The Broncos have Jerry Jeudy, and Jerry
Hmm.
Jeudy played me in fantasy last week and killed me. And this is the first playoff game, and Jerry Jeudy needs to kill me in fantasy. It's part of the narrative. So I'm going to have the Broncos. Russell Wilson comes back from concussion protocol, able to play, has a big game, starts to look better. You still got questions, but I think it'll start to be a little better of a team. And then
If
you got
Russell
the
Wilson
yeah.
starts, I'd go Broncos, but I'm not sure if he is or not. So I'm gonna go Cardinals until I guess further developments.
I think still the Broncos defense could kind of win that game. I mean, we just saw
Hmm.
them have a huge game against Patrick Mahomes. So
Yes.
that's how I feel about it. You got the Bengals and Bucks.
It kills me, but Cincinnati, I
Yeah.
think they're I think they've been elevating the level of I mean just decision making. Jamar Chase is back and healthy, has been for a few weeks now. He's been a huge asset. T. Higgins has been balling out. Uh,
Number
I'm
one
not sure.
receiver.
I'm not sure what Mixon's. Well, it's because Trevor Lawrence was his quarterback in college. He,
Yeah.
made him the way he is. It's all credit to Lawrence.
Gosh, and I'll tell you, man, if there was ever a way to get T. Higgins to Jacksonville to fill
Do
in
it.
like where Zay Jones was, I would send like any pick they wanted, unless it was the first overall pick, and I might still consider it then, because that would be so stupid of a receiving core. I've also got Bengals in this. The Bengals just they show up the big games. Joe Burrow shows up in those moments, unless he gets sacked 100 times. And I don't think the Bucks are going to be sacking him 100 times. So I've got him winning that game. I've got Tampa continuing to struggle, continuing to fail Tom Brady. I can't blame
Joe
it on
Burrow
Tom.
just has great on-field awareness. He senses, when defenders are closing in on him. He's gotten so much better, just not over just like this season, but just from the start of his NFL career. Like I just can't help but feel that that guy is going to be, one of the top AFC quarterbacks moving forward. He's going to be one of the biggest challenges to Trevor Lawrence to bring down, and I respect him for it. I mean, it's hard not to respect Burrow. I mean, he's very clutch, and he's not the most athletic quarterback. He's got athleticism, but it's not like he's going to win games the way Mahomes does or Josh Allen does, on his feet. He just is a quick decision maker, and he's got some very reliable weapons. And when their team plays complementary football too, like
Yeah.
they're always on the same page. And I would say earlier in the season, I think I remember week one, Burrow, what did he toss, like 3 or 4 interceptions in the
It was
first game?
4 the first week.
Yeah, so he didn't start off real hot, but I mean, as the season's gone on, there's no question he's gotten better and improved. So I fully expect Cincinnati to run the table in that game.
Yeah, I think they'll win that. They've got a good team up there, and Burrow just shows up in those big games. And mark my words on one thing: there will be a Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence AFC Championship game.
There
That
will
will
be,
happen at some
and I will look
point.
forward to that.
Yeah, that is literally destiny. That will happen at some point. Um, 49ers and Seahawks. I've got the 49ers winning this. Seahawks are having issues. I know Kenneth Gainwell was out this last week. They could be missing him again. And
Hmm.
the 49ers can secure the division with a win. I think they're just going to get it done.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd take the 49ers.
Yeah, they're just too good of a team. They've probably got the best roster, maybe aside from the Eagles.
Hmm.
Possibly they're pretty close, just outside of the quarterback position. And
Their
then
defense just lit up the field against Tampa, man. I mean, they are just
yeah,
stellar.
they're
Seriously,
great.
like reliable. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you got Saints and Falcons. I went Saints because Desmond Ritter's in his first start. Probably
Yeah.
have a lot of mistakes. He did say he was going to bring a Super Bowl to Atlanta, but I don't know if it's going to be this year.
He doesn't lack confidence, that's for sure.
Yeah, something tells me maybe the Falcons won't go all the way and win the Super Bowl. As much as that would
Yeah.
be a cool thing.
Not this year, at least.
Yeah, maybe next
And when
year.
they get
Next
back to
year.
the Super Bowl, they're going to be under a lot of pressure for that last Super Bowl appearance they were in. So they're going to have to make it up to their fans big time when they get there.
Yeah, I do hope they win one. I really do. I like the Falcons. Probably my second favorite team, arguably.
they're
The
they're going to be good in the years to come. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah, they've
Especially
got a
with
lot of good
Tampa,
weapons.
especially when Tampa and Brady part, whenever that is, whether that's next season or moving forward. I think Atlanta could honestly take over that division.
Yeah, it's gonna be them and Carolina, depending on who they have at quarterback in Carolina, and also
Hmm.
in Atlanta. To be fair, because you don't know that Ritter's gonna be the guy long term. Commanders and Giants, and keep in mind
My
this one.
fantasy team.
Yeah, the Commanders tied with the Giants, and they went on bye week. So they've had 2 weeks before this game to stew on it.
Hmm.
I feel
I'm
like
going to
this
take the
has to be
Giants.
really okay.
Yeah.
How
They just
come?
got embarrassed by Philly, like badly. And I believe they hold a playoff position still, so they cannot afford to drop one to Washington. Washington could win it. I'm not arguing that. They've shown they obviously beat the Eagles earlier this year and the only team to do so. But I feel New York has to like make up for this last week.
Yeah, maybe they will. I think the Commanders are an actual good football team that has a clear sense of direction finally, and so I think they're gonna get it done. I think they're gonna beat them.
Could be.
Yeah, and then you got Eagles over Bears. That's my prediction. I just think this isn't even a game. you
I
know?
think Chicago could make it close. Fields has progressed a lot. And I do believe Chicago is going to be one of the better teams along with Detroit in the years to come in that division. I think they could make it close, but I think Philadelphia is just going to overpower them. They're just a better team. It'll be similar to Kansas City and Jacksonville when they played.
Yeah,
Kansas City is a juggernaut. Jacksonville's finding its team identity and, you know, trying their hardest to get there as fast as possible. But it was just two teams that are in different spots, and just the one team's more established than the other at the moment.
yeah. I just feel like this is gonna be the game where people are gonna kind of realize, maybe Justin Fields is not a top five quarterback right now. I
Yeah.
mean, he's not terrible, but he's not perfect right now. He's got to develop as a passer. He's good at all the other
Mhm.
things, but he needs to become a good passer. In the last game of the week, Packers and Rams. Who do you got?
Green Bay, they're playing catch up. And Christian Watson, man, has he been a beast. He is really making some eye popping plays and helping that offense out. Aaron Rodgers, I think, I wouldn't say he's done, but I don't see him ever winning a Super Bowl again. I think Green Bay is going to have to find an answer at quarterback here in the coming season, possibly this season, because there's been hints and rumors that Rodgers might call it quits. So that happens. You're looking at Jordan Love or possibly someone they draft if they're not confident in him. But I would say the Packers get it done.
I think Aaron Rodgers will. He'll win another Super Bowl when he follows Brett Favre's path to the New York Jets.
Yeah,
yeah,
maybe. And then he
no,
ends up with the
that
Vikings after they get rid of Cousins. No,
yeah,
I'm just kidding.
he has some respect for the Vikings. I've also got the
Definitely.
Packers winning. Rams are on an emotional high, and they're a terrible team. It's
Hmm.
just the simple truth about it. The Packers are also off a bye week. They've had time to prepare for this game. I think they're just going to go in and beat them, have a solid game, and Baker Mayfield's going to come back down to earth a little bit. I don't think it'll
Yeah.
be awful, but I don't think he's going to play some miraculous game for him.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers will have to summon his inner Derek Carr if he wants to lose to the Rams. So,
Yeah, he's probably got it in there somewhere. So, yeah, those are all the games for this upcoming week, and we'll close out the show with our last section, What Went Right. So, if Jacksonville is able to defeat the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday in the bank, why do you think it was?
I think some of the most important things is they don't beat themselves, especially on penalties. For as good as the game as they had against Tennessee in their own stadium, it was they amassed a lot of penalties in the first half, and those can be a backbreaker if it happens at the wrong time in the game. So definitely Definitely don't amass more penalties than you need, if any at all. Obviously, you got to shut down Ezekiel Elliott, CD Lamb, and Dak Prescott. You got to have a plan to confront what they're going to bring because they're going to make plays. I mean, there's no question about that. You have to win the regarding turnovers. Don't turn the ball over to them. Capitalize on every critical error that Dallas makes, whether it's critical or minor. Put points on the board to respond. I think clock management is huge. The Jags have had some success with having these drives that, can milk 5 or 6 minutes off the clock this year. I've seen it several times from them now.
Saw it
So
in person.
keep the ball out of Dak Prescott's hands as much as possible. And I think overall, the defense is going to have to bring a lot of pressure on Prescott. Like they're going to have answers to him. And like I said, there will be big plays that he makes. There's no question. But they can't, get in a frenzy or panic when that happens. They have to have a response. And I think red zone, efficiency has been a strong suit of that defense, minus the Lions game. They've had some games where they've been incredible at, keeping the team to at least a field goal, not letting them in with 6 points and then the extra point. So I think if they can manage that, they can, and they limit their mistakes and penalties, I think they got a chance.
Yeah, I agree with all those points. I've got two main ones. Trevor Lawrence needs to have a good, clean performance. Don't turn over the ball. Maybe you can turn over once, but just try to have a clean performance again. Play like you've been playing. If he's like he was against Tennessee, they should win this game. And the other part of this is for the Jaguars defense. Do what you did last week. Force turnovers. You're not going to be perfect. The Cowboys are going to score points, but give your offense extra possessions and take advantage of some bad throws because we know now Dak Prescott can make mistakes. We knew that before, to be fair, but we saw it in Houston, or I don't know if it was in Houston or in Dallas, but we saw it against Houston. And Jacksonville can take advantage of that. I think there's just been some magic at home this year, too. Get Jacksonville involved in the game. Probably the biggest thing.
He's just got to make quick reads, get the ball out of his hands quick. Don't let the defense pressure him too much. And just continue to find options downfield.
Yep, I think he'll succeed in all those things. Should be a good game. Hopefully they'll win it. Hopefully we'll keep this thing rolling, and maybe we'll control our own destiny by the end of the week.
Yeah.
But that's all we're going to have for this show. We appreciate y'all joining us today for the latest episode of On the Prowl, presented by Cardiac Cats. We'll see y'all next week after Week 15.